Quit to win. I can't afford that, my mom would say as I showed her a shirt with a man on a horse holding a stick. You know the one. It was the one that the rich kids wore back in my day. You see, my mother was a single mother. My father, who I can only remember seeing about 6 times through my life, and the 6th time was as an adult, seeing him in his coffin. They divorced when I was 3 years old. I'm sorry, she would say, you can't play baseball, football, basketball, go to summer camp, or be in that play. You can't do all the things that you see them do. Them were all the affluent kids that I went to school with. The kids whose neighborhood my bus would drive through every day on the way to school. Nice new homes made of big stone, new driveways with new cars, manicured grass, lawns. Me, I lived in a 3-bedroom box, no air conditioning, with 5, sometimes 6 people to share one very small bathroom. Now, their situation, my friends, theirs was very different from mine, as my mom would often have to remind me, but I wanted what they had, and I didn't understand why I couldn't have it. I wanted the shirt with the man on the horse holding the stick. I wanted to be in all the activities they were in. I wanted to play football and baseball and basketball and be in the plays and go to camp. I wanted it all, and I didn't understand why I couldn't have it. Let me paint a brief, very consolidated picture of how I grew up and why I had to quit in order to win. I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I grew up there, but I'm going to take you just for a brief note that we're going to kind of sidestep. When I was 3, we moved to the East Coast and then to New Mexico, and that was between the ages of 3 and 5. Those are what they call formative years, right? It was on the East Coast where I developed speech. So when we moved back to Oklahoma, I had an East Coast accent. So here was my profile. I was a poor, small, skinny black kid who lived in the projects and spoke with an East Coast accent. How did you think that worked out for me? The black kids, including my relatives, called it talking white. Let's just say I felt doomed from the start. This is where my struggle began. The bullying, the name calling, being pushed and slapped around. I'll never forget being held underwater by a much older kid to the point where I thought I was going to drown. I was in fear always. Every time I set foot outside, many times I would have to peer out of the windows. I would walk out and look down the street as I wanted to go to the community center just to see if any of the bullies were around. And unfortunately for me, the bullies were always a grade or 2 older, many times having siblings that were just like them. So here was little old me, and then I have my bullies and their siblings. Now in school, I remember in the 2nd grade being the only black kid in my class, watching the teacher smile at the kids who received the smiley face and that little shiny red star that they used to stick on the papers. I would look at my paper, and while it had red on it, the red was only there to show what I had missed or what I did wrong. I distinctly remember a time when I took a spelling test, and when the teacher was returning the test to me, I will never forget how I felt when she handed me my test marked up with red ink, nothing to say, and then the smiles that she gave to the students who received the smiley face and, yes, the red star. I wanted a smile. I wanted a smiley face. And the red star on my paper, asked my peer sitting next to me who received a smile, a smiley face, and a red star, I said, "How did you do it?" And he told me, he said, "My mom helped me." He told me that his mom made flashcards and would go over the spelling words until he got them all right. Well, I knew that my mom would not be able to help in this way. She worked multiple jobs as a maid cleaning other people's houses to keep me and my siblings clothed and fed. So I decided to make my own flashcards. I got my little scissors, you know, the ones with the little rounded corners so you don't poke your eye out. And I gathered a stack of brown grocery bags because they didn't have plastic back then. We were a little bit more environmentally conscious. And I cut the number of little rectangles to make my own cards to the number of words that I had on my spelling list. And yes, I went over my words one by one until I can memorize and spell them all. So let's fast forward. I waited with eager anticipation as the teacher handed out spelling tests. Watching the kids who got the smile, the smiley face, and the red star, she walks up to me, and when she got there, she looked at me, and finally, I got the smile. I got the smiley face. I got the red star. I was on cloud 9. I felt incredible. Now, this marked a new beginning for me. I wanted to feel this way all the time. So there I was, second grade, and yes, at that young age, I realized that I had happened up on something important. These were my learnings. There are strategies that lead to success and achievement. And that if I put in the work to carry out those strategies, that I too can be successful. Now let's go back for a moment. Remember that I told you that I would ask my mom to be involved in different activities that the other kids were involved in? Well, I was fortunate because while she couldn't afford it, I am grateful that she would seek out help. And as a result, I was blessed by many who would allow my mother to pay what she could. Others would provide scholarships for me to participate. And it was through these activities that I began to grow and develop in spite of the negative environment that I was subjected to. Now, my black peers from the neighborhood saw how involved I was and began to question my allegiance. They would ask me why I hung out with the white kids. Now, keep in mind, they were usually not up to anything good. So once again, I began putting the pieces together, and I decided that, well, and I just jumped right over a card there. So let's go back. They hung out in the background and talked about everyone else. And I remember telling them, I hang out with the white kids because you all are not about anything. So look at what the white kids are doing. Listen to what the white kids are talking about. They couldn't see it, but I could. Those kids were going somewhere. They were going places. They were involved. They were growing. They were learning. And my neighborhood peers were not. And needless to say, that did not go over too well either. Now, as I became friends with many of the affluent white kids in my class, I was exposed to their family dynamics. And I quickly realized that their family dynamics were different from mine. I began to realize how dysfunctional my family was. I would listen to their fathers talking business over the phone. I would meet their older siblings who were home from college. What was that? Or listen to older school-age siblings talk about going to a university. Again, what? So once again, I began putting the pieces together and decided that, again, conducting business was key to providing a good family life. And secondly, colleges and universities were important to being successful. So from that point forward, I knew that I wanted to go to college, and that by going to college, I could have a better life than the one that I was in. As the years passed by, I continued on my journey of being a good student. Literally, from that point on, I watched what the so-called smart kids did, and I tried to do it better. I noticed that many of the smart kids sat near the front of the classroom. They took really good notes, and they actually paid attention and participated in class and asked really good questions. Now go figure. I began to find my way in athletics, oftentimes making the newspaper in football and basketball. The bullying that I spoke of earlier began to decrease, and I began to focus on my dream of leaving the projects. I remember sharing my dreams of leaving the projects and going to college to a group of my black peers from my neighborhood, only to hear laughter and the question, now how are you going to do that? Now, how are you going to go to college? How are you going to get out of this neighborhood? Wake up, man. You ain't white. Your mother is a maid. You ain't got no daddy. How are you going to go to college? The laughter continued. I remember looking away and just staring off into space and saying, I don't know how, I just know I am. This was a heavy blow for me as an 8th grader. It was also a reminder for me to keep my hopes and dreams to myself, sharing them only with those who I thought would understand. Now, when you live in poverty and you have friends who don't, you're constantly reminded that you do. Because I couldn't afford to dress like them, I had to stand tall in hand-me-downs and clothes from the Salvation Army or Sears or Kmart if I was lucky. I had to act like I wasn't embarrassed when they dropped me off at my little box house that I lived in after needing a ride home. These were not fond memories for me. High school overall was a pretty good experience. Once more, I was fortunate that I was a good student. The message regarding the importance of your GPA was not clearly communicated as I was growing up. That said, I had a 3.72 my junior year, and that brought me lots of attention. Picture that. I was a black male in advanced math and science with a GPA of 3.72. I had a number of colleges interested in me attending their schools for both athletics and academics. But being from Oklahoma, in my day, there was only one college that I really wanted to attend, and that was the University of Oklahoma. Yes. Now, like many, I thought I wanted to play football there, but then that's another story for another day. While I was applying to a number of colleges and reviewing various scholarship opportunities, I received an acceptance letter before the end of my junior year, and yes, from the University of Oklahoma. So when I received their letter, all bets were off for the colleges. No matter what the offers were, I was on my way to the University of Oklahoma. Now, I was fortunate enough to just piece together a number of small scholarships along with a little financial aid, and I was on my way. With the help of the good Lord above, I left the projects. That mission was accomplished, and there were many missions that followed after that. Now, there is so much more to this story that I would love to be able to share with you, but due to time, I'm not able. Allow me to summarize my key learning as I was heading off to college and why I had to quit in order to win. I had to quit thinking that dreams didn't come true. I had to quit thinking that rightly focused hard work would not pay off. I had to quit hanging out with negative influences, regardless of race. I had to quit anything that would prevent me from moving forward in a positive way. Ladies and gentlemen, I had to quit in order to win. Thank you.